On the topic of Seventh-day Adventists and tithe, there are people who have published arguments why Adventists should withhold or redirect the tithe away from the organized church. One of the most common documents passed around online is this one right here, the truth about tithe by a Mr. Vance Ferrell. However, you will see in this video that this document, like others that promote tampering with tithe, is full of errors, half-truths, and falsehoods. Number one, the most popular argument to tamper with tithe is based entirely upon the 1905 letter from Ellen White to Colorado Conference President G.F. Watson. Whenever you hear someone say that Adventists can send tithe wherever they want, they will almost always make some reference to Ellen White's Tithe and the Southern work, and this document right here by Vance Ferrell. While he uses several other arguments, the bulk of this document relies almost entirely upon the Watson letter. Since I've already made an entire video addressing that situation in detail, I'll just give a summary. The number one most popular argument used to withdraw or redirect the tithe away from the organized Adventist church is based on several misleading statements. The Southern Missionary Society was an independent ministry. That is false. For example, Vance Ferrell right here claims in his chapter about the Watson letter that some workers in an independent ministry. That is false. Anyone can go right now to the official archives, look up the yearbook right here for 1905 and 1904, and you can see for yourself the SMS listed right here. The Southern Missionary Society had been for years an official branch of the organized Southern Union. Furthermore, 10 years previously, in 1895, it began, quote, under the instruction of and bearing the credentials of the who? Of the General Conference. But no surprise, Ferrell omitted these important facts. And here's a quote for your notes. Speaking of the Southern Missionary Society, the work was not to be carried forward as a private business, but as a conference enterprise. Ellen White specifically stated and affirmed this, but of course you will never read this quote in Ferrell's paper. The people being paid and receiving tithe were independent Bible workers or missionaries. That also is false. The tithe was solicited. That also is false. Edson White himself stated the complete opposite in his own letters. See my longer video for more details. Ellen White commended church members for sending tithe outside the organized church. That also is false. And the treasury or the storehouse for the tithe is anywhere we feel gospel work is being accomplished, or the treasury for tithe can be outside the organized denominational work. That is false. Ferrell claims right here, page 39, church leaders refused to even admit publicly they existed. That is so blatantly not true. It's listed publicly right here in the official yearbook, and they were sent out by the General Conference. Page 41, Ferrell claims the tithe in question was not paid into the denomination. And again, it was not paid into the denomination. Again and again, that's false right here in Edson White's own words. For several years, the SMS has supported from 2 to 5 ordained ministers among the colored people, and we keep a separate account of the small amounts of tithes that come to us in this way and apply them entirely to pay the ministers working for the colored people. J. Edson White was the president of the Southern Missionary Society, and out of his own mouth, he himself stated that the tithe in question did remain within the denomination and went to ordained ministers, not to independent workers or missionaries. Because Vance Ferrell has obscured the facts, he comes to completely opposite conclusions. Another example right here, page 32, Ellen White commended others who also gave it to workers outside the regular lines. That's a key point, because yes, it is a fact that these women did give tithe. However, it went to an official church destination. The channel or the line was not regular, but the destination was. Vance Ferrell is, however, not arguing to keep tithe inside the official church. He is arguing specifically to take it outside the church to independent ministries. For example, Amazing Facts is a supporting ministry, but it is independent of the church. You will not find it anywhere in the Adventist Yearbook because it does not belong to the conference or union, but the Southern Missionary Society did so, and Vance Ferrell, like others, never make that important distinction. People have discretion over 90% to give wherever they want. People have freedom to give offerings wherever they want. If Adventists want to support independent ministries with offerings, that's great. Praise the Lord. I do so. But this paper is not about offerings. It's about the tithe. And Ferrell has so obscured the facts that he continues to make blatantly false claims. And here's another example. On page 50, Vance Ferrell introduces document file 213 and says that this is dynamite. Wow, kaboom, dynamite. Document file 213 refers to a situation involving a Dr. Charles Stewart, who was a physician who worked with Dr. Kellogg at the Battle Creek Sanitarium. This Dr. Stewart raised questions about the use of tithe, and these questions were based entirely upon guess which letter. That's right, 1905 Watson letter. Apparently, church leaders Willie White, Daniels, and Prescott were tasked with the response. We are not exactly sure who wrote this because there are no names or signatures. This document 213 is a 3-page memo that is an outline of a suggested approach to Dr. Stewart's question, but again contains no dates, no signatures, and importantly, no statements from Ellen White. In other words, someone heard about the Watson letter and had questions. They wrote to leadership where people sat down, discussed it, and made some notes for a response. There is no evidence anywhere that Ellen White had anything to do with document 213, but that doesn't stop people today from teaching the exact opposite. For example, here we go again, page 50. Ferrell writes that document 213 was, quote, her thinking, and that Ellen White was, quote, encouraging others to send their tithe directly to workers not employed by the church, end quote. So this is completely false. There is no evidence anywhere that Mrs. White ever counseled anyone at any time to place the 10% tithe anywhere except within the denomination, but Vance Ferrell, having obscured the facts, then turns around and uses her name to advocate the exact opposite. And here's another example right here, page 35 and 36, quote, many of our brethren have expressed themselves to the effect that if the conference continues to pay money to such ministers, they will withhold their tithes. We do not say that it would be right for individuals to withhold from the Lord that which is his, but on the other hand, it certainly is very wrong for the conference to give credentials to such men. And notice this, it is nothing less than sin to take the Lord's money to pay for such labor. Many people like to share this quote and say, see, look at this. Ellen White said that it's a sin to give tithes to unworthy ministers. And page 36, Vance Ferrell says right here that the prophets for our time declared that it was sin for such men to be supported with these sacred tithes. The only problem with this quote is that it's not from Ellen White. It was written by O.A. Olsen in the pamphlet titled An Appeal to Our Ministers and Conference Committees. The first 9 pages were written by O.A. Olsen, a former GC president, with the rest of it being written by Ellen White. When you search for this quote in the Ellen White database, you won't find it because it was not written by her. But if you read the digitized version by the Andrews University Center for Adventist Research right here at archive.org, if you scroll down, you will see his name right here, O.A. Olsen. Also, if you go to the James White Library, again, Andrews University, look at the note right here. GC President Olsen wrote the first 9 pages. So again, one of the most popular quotes used to justify not paying tithes to the conference is a fake. It's not from Ellen White. And what is really interesting is that the context of the quote clearly indicates that it is the conference that is to receive and dispense tithe. But no surprise, people like Vance Ferrell, who argue against tithe, conveniently ignore this and instead focus on just this one sentence and then proclaim that Ellen White said paying tithe to unworthy pastors is a sin when she said no such thing. Vance Ferrell makes multiple misleading and false statements about the Southern Missionary Society. He makes false statements about document 213 being the thinking of Ellen White, and he uses a completely fake quote to make Ellen White say something that she did not say at all. Yet he has the audacity, page 43, to blast other people for misquoting and twisting the spirit of prophecy when that is exactly what he did. And it is very interesting to observe, notice this, he constantly complains about unworthy ministers receiving tithe when Ellen White said right here, unworthy ministers may receive some of the means thus raised, but dare anyone because of this withhold from the treasury and brave the curse of God? I dare not. I pay my what? I pay my tithe gladly and freely. saying, as David did, "Of thine own have we given thee." The Watson letter is the linchpin of this entire document, and if you take the Watson letter away, then his conclusions all fall apart. One last observation. Ferrell writes on page 4 that in September 1991, a supplement to the Adventist Review by Roger Kuhn was released, which contained a distorted portrayal of facts, and yet interestingly, notice this, Ferrell makes no attempt whatsoever to either identify or refute any of these apparent distortions. And it's also very interesting to observe that someone whose own booklet contains numerous distortions would accuse others of presenting distorted facts. You notice that? Accuse others of what you yourself are doing. Anyways, that's enough for this video. All of the major points have been covered. If you want to learn more, please check out my other videos. Thank you for watching.